Hi everyone. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about visitation and child protective services and all that good stuff. So the kids had gone to their dad's maybe once before Christmas of 2014. Well, they went to their dad's that Christmas, and which was the one I was telling you about the last time. Anyways, so they went over there, and when my kids came back, they came back on the 26th at noon. They had informed me that their father had left them in a vehicle by themselves for an hour to 2 hours while they went Christmas shopping. With nobody else in the vehicle. The car was running, and in the state they were in, which I think a lot of states are this way, you cannot leave a kid unsupervised in a vehicle with it running until they're the age of 14. To me, let's be realistic. If you're going to a gas station and you're running in the gas station for a quick minute, I don't care. If you're pulling up to your house and you need to run in your house so quick and grab something, okay. I understand that anything can happen within 1 second of you exiting in a vehicle. It can blow up. Your kid could get out of their seat and hit something. I get all of that. Trust me, I do. But my thing with this was you took them to a mall in a parking lot where there's nobody, you can't see them at all. Anybody could come up to the vehicle and take the kids, and you wouldn't know for 2 hours. That was my issue. So not only that, my kids informed me at that point as well that their father was leaving them home alone and going to work as well, and him and his new wife was whatever they wanted to do, so they were leaving the children home alone. My child's 8, the oldest. She has no clue what to do if her 2-year-old brother starts choking, if someone tries to break into the home, if anything happens. She has zero clue on what to do. She gets the concept of 911, don't get me wrong, but still at 8 years old, you should not be at home with a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. It's not your responsibility. And then on top of that, it showed me that he had lied on his paperwork that he had sent me as far as who's watching the children, what's going to be going on. When I asked them like about the grandparents, they had told me that they walked over there on occasions, to make sure that they're okay. And then, they informed me that at the time my son was 2, that they weren't putting him in a car seat and he was just sitting in the car. Laws are there for a purpose, and obviously the laws there didn't matter. Well, then they also informed me that they were hitting my son. At 2, my son really couldn't say nothing. He just said, yeah, yeah, yeah. But he would show me like where he was being hit at. Like he would show his arm, his face, his back, his legs, but he couldn't physically say hit or nothing like that. So, all this was going on. I asked my kids about sleeping arrangements, and they told me that it was my 3, his son, which is their half brother, and then his stepdaughter. So 5 kids, 4 beds, and they were all sleeping in the same room. Well, for those of you that know me personally, know that my kid's half brother had touched my oldest daughter inappropriately, and he has got 4 years on my oldest daughter. She did, just for you all that don't know, I did take her to the doctor. She was examined. Nothing was broken. She's still pure and innocent. But he was aware of that. So for him to put all these people in the same room and not care just kind of pissed me off. Well, then all this other stuff had went on that day. So when they came back and they were telling me about all of this, I had confronted him about it, and he told me that they would discipline my children as they saw fit. So then they went back another time. I believe it was in January. They went back and saw their dad again. Then Same situation, you know, the hitting, the beating of my son, whatever. Well, in between all of this, Child Protective Services got involved. And when they went to talk to him, he showed him his badge. So as y'all can tell, he's a police officer. And they chose to turn a blind eye to it and act like it wasn't a big deal because of his badge. So, I got irritated. Well, then they went back for spring break of 2015. And when he was bringing me my son back, he blew a puff of smoke in my son. Whereas in earlier blogs, I had told y'all about how my son had respiratory problems. And the one big thing the doctor had talked about was not smoking around him because he could relapse. So then my kids started telling me that when they were eating, they had to eat on the floor. And if they didn't eat all their food, they got in trouble. And sorry, I hear my daughter coming down the stairs, so I'm trying to make sure she doesn't come into my room. So if she does, I can like stop her really quick. Anyways, so they were telling me all of this stuff. And then my son at this point was able to tell me more of what was going on. And so, of course, Child Protective Services got involved again because I was hell-bent determined that they were going to quit hurting my children. Well, once again, they showed a badge and nothing happened again. It was completely ignored. So I got pissed off and I contacted the governor. I will find you that letter because it was a really good letter. And I'll read it to y'all. Maybe on my next blog. I wish I would have had it now because I would have read it to y'all now and y'all would have been like, dang, that's a good letter. She needs to write for me too because it was that good. So it was good enough to get him involved at the time. So I guess he opened up an investigation where the downfall to this was that my kids were here, where we're at now, and that was in a different state. Well, when Child Protective Services in my home state got involved and they tried to talk to my son because he can't speak, they really weren't able to find out what was going on. And so they pretty much let it go. So then he got him again for the summer. And it was a bad situation once again. And then I kind of, like, I was done. I was really done. I'm taking, at this point, I was done. But here's the downfall to this. Was 2015, that summer when he was coming to get his kids, I had already served him with court papers for home state change with my children. And when he came to get his kids, he served me with court papers stating that he was trying to get sole custody of my kids. This is when me wanting to blog really came into play for me because I wanted to blog my emotions. When I got served those papers, I had my son in the car with me and I wasn't releasing my son until I read everything. And so once I read everything, my son did go. And I had to hire an attorney I had an attorney in 2 states, is more or less what this came down to. So during that whole process of the court situation, which we'll get back into that later, we got my kids back. Well, then in September, we got my son again. You know, they went the Labor Day weekend in September 2015. And I got my kids back. And the first thing my son told me was that his dad, or not his dad, but his stepmom and his stepsister were hitting on him. And he was telling me all the places. So I called his dad and I told him that they are going to stop hitting my son. And he more or less once again told me the same thing, that he will do as he chooses fit to do with my son, and they will discipline him and my girls however they choose fit. Or at the same time, my daughters had told me prior to me calling that they had told my oldest daughter that they didn't like her because she had my attitude. Well, I'm sorry. She is a part of me. And so, at that point, I was like, no, boo-boo. So I told him, I said, the next time you want to lay hands on my children or on my son, when I get him back, because that's the first thing he told me when he always got in my vehicle, or my girls would tell me, I told him I wasn't coming home. I was going to drive straight to the hospital. I was going to walk into the emergency room, and I was going to inform them that my son just told me he was beat by his stepmom and his stepsister, and I was going to allow them to examine him, and I was going to allow Child Protective Services to get involved. And then on top of that, when he got home and Child Protective Services were sitting at his front door, as well as law enforcement, I didn't want to hear about it. So, after that, he never got his kids again. That was the last time that he ever picked up his children. And so, I was like, well, I guess obviously if they can't beat my kids, they don't want to see my children, because he hasn't seen his kids since September. But at the same time, with all of that, I'm wondering if it's because when we went to court, he lost. The judge threw out his case towards me for wanting sole custody of my children. I'm sorry, I got this piece of hair that's like bothering me. They threw that out. I won my case in both states. So my kid's home state is in our home state now where we live at. And he has not been in the picture since Labor Day of 2015. So it's been over a year since he's seen his children. That November after Labor Day, he was supposed to get his kids for Thanksgiving. So I made the drive because the order states that I have to meet him halfway. So I drove to our halfway point. I messaged him and asked him where he was because he wasn't there. He didn't message me back. I even called his wife. Nothing. So then I got home. My oldest daughter was a little upset. And then Christmas time, he said he wanted his kids. He called me 2 days before he was supposed to get them and told me he wasn't getting them. And he made no attempt to see his kids since. There's no excuses for him not to see his children. He does realize that in a couple months, my oldest daughter will be 12 and she has full say on if she ever goes to her dad's again. So once she turns 12, if she doesn't want to go, she doesn't have to go regardless of what he wants or how he feels. And so he was calling them, but he wanted to call off of different phone numbers. And I am that mom that if I don't know the number, you have a phone number, it's a working number, call them off your phone, because they're not going to answer any phone number that calls them. I'm sorry, they're young. I'm not fixing to have some crazy dude or crazy woman calling them and acting a fool. So, I kept a log on every time he called off a different number, and my daughter would call his phone back. And sometimes they answered, and sometimes his wife wanted to pick up the phone and be a complete bitch and tell her she ain't talking to her daddy. So this went on for a while. Well, then finally, we went out to eat, and I'm not going to sit here and say we remembered, because we completely forgot that it was Wednesday. We completely forgot that their dad was going to call. So after we ate dinner, we noticed that their dad had called because he left a voicemail. So my daughter went to call him back, and it picked up the phone. Well, my daughter asked to speak to her dad, and she refused, and she kept on and on and on. So I did take the phone from my daughter, and I cussed her out. And she kept threatening me with court, and I said, I'll be more than happy to see you in court where we're at, because they don't have the upper hand, because it's not in their state no more. It's in my state, and it's 8 hours away from them. So if they want to take me to court, they can. My attitude was, you can come to where I'm at and take me to court, because you don't have the upper hand anymore. And the fact that I am a good mom and y'all want to sit here and play games, okay. You can explain to the judge why y'all want to sit here and play games with a bunch of young kids, is pretty much what my attitude was. Well, after I cussed her out the last time and told her, if you want to take me to court, bring me here, they have not talked to their children, or he has not attempted to call his kids. And that's been about 6-7 months ago. So if you're looking at this whole thread right here, it's been over a year since he's made any attempt to see his children. It's been almost a year since he's made contact to his kids or even tried to call his kids. And so I have come to the conclusion that I am 100% a single mom with no father in the picture at all. And I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly okay with it. I have my struggles and I have my days when I do sometimes wish their dad was in the picture, because I don't feel like it's fair that their dad's not here and that they don't know their dad. But on that same note, I kind of feel like it's better this way, because they're not being hurt and they're not having someone that comes in and out their life when he sees fit. But I do believe that one day he's going to wake up and realize that he had 3 beautiful kids that love unconditional, and when he needs them, they're not going to be here for him. But I have to also look at the fact that he has a total of 5 children, and he has really nothing to do with any of the 5 kids that he has. And he is more involved with his stepdaughter, but that's because his wife. And so reality of that was he really don't care about her either. But that's kind of where we are. And this is the point where we are in my life now, where there's stuff going on that I'm not going to talk about, because if they do get a hold of this blog, I don't want them to know everything in my life. And I don't want them to know my future plans with everything, if that makes sense. But as it goes on, I will inform y'all of what my future holds for me and my kids. But I am going to blog because as of right now, we are pretty much up to date with where I am with my kids, their dad, and the fact that their dad's not in the picture. So now my blogs will consist of where we are today, and the realizations of dating, work, my kids, and with the holidays approaching, how much fun this is going to be. But that's my life, and when I blog again, I guess I'll blog about my life. Anyways, I hope y'all have a great night, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.